Someone asked me, when
Mhm.
people are involved in tasks that I have to do, I do them. But when it comes to important tasks that only I know about, I tend to procrastinate. How to overcome this and be consistent no matter what?
Man, procrastination. That's my number one thing that is holding me back from a lot of stuff.
Okay, so I prepared an answer. So the first part of the question, when people are involved in tasks that I have to do, I do them. And that is because accountability works. Accountability gets you outside of your head and it shows us our blind spots. And it motivates us because we all want that validation from the tribe that we're on the path, that we're checking things off. With no accountability, there's lack of a feedback loop. We don't have this validation because maybe the results of doing the task is not immediate. But here's a story to show how not to underestimate small tasks and how to keep going without accountability. A man called Manji in India, also known as the Mountain Man, because he literally moved a mountain single-handedly over the course of 22 years with a hammer. He'd get up every day, get ready for the day, and start carving a pathway into that mountain. He'd rest, then come continue the work in the evening. 22 years later, the path through the mountain reached the other side, a 100-meter long path. He did it with a hammer, not a bulldozer, not a dynamite. Most of us are embarrassed of the resources that we have because we compare our resources to other people's resources. We compare our current skills to other people's skills. But that's not even the main point. The main point is, why did he do it? Which leads me to talk about the big picture, the meaning, the purpose of these smaller tasks and how they contribute to the big picture. And here's why he did it. His wife got injured, and the closest doctor was in the next village, which was 75 kilometers away. Just because there was a mountain between the two villages, they had to go around the mountain. Unfortunately, his wife didn't get the help she needed and she died. So he didn't want other people to suffer the same suffering that he went through. So he started picking up the hammer every day and carving a path into the mountain. So he had a big why. He had a big meaning. So he was not discouraged. He was not waiting for someone to validate him. He was not waiting for someone to whip him to work. He was doing it. He believed in it. He didn't compare his resources. He just went at it because it was meaningful to him.
Mhm. He didn't give a shit about
He
what
did.
others
Yes.
think. Yeah.
So whatever the task is
Mhm.
that you procrastinate on, ask yourself, why am I doing it? What's the purpose of it? And make a list of 3 things. Like if it's working out, I'll feel more energetic and focused. Subsequently, I'll influence the people in my life in a more resourceful way. That's number 1 on the list. A second why, I'll look better. And while that's not everything, it's always nice to have a pleasant aesthetics. And that also inspires people in my life to take care of their health. A third reason, I'll increase my chances of living longer and I'll likely have less diseases and illnesses. Subsequently, I increase my chances of creating more beautiful memories with people in my life. That's your list. Write it down or just memorize it. And every time you feel that resistance that you're procrastinating, you don't want to do the task because nobody's going to see and you're not going to see the immediate result, think of the long-term result of the big picture and how
Yes.
these 3 reasons are going to keep you going, just like Manji had strong emotional reasons to keep going every day, even if you don't see the immediate results.
Do it for the
Fine.
sake of humanity. You could be the one who cure cancer. I think the other reason why people procrastinate is that they rely on motivation and they wait for a moment that they are feeling motivated to do a certain action and then they take action, which is an unsustainable strategy. Motivation is an illusion, like it's so unreliable. Consistency and discipline are reliable. If you replace motivation with consistency and discipline, you'll get things done no matter what.
So most people procrastinate Because of the voices in their heads, voices that subtly say, don't embarrass yourself. Don't make a fool of yourself. Who do you think you are? Recognize these voices first. If we don't recognize these voices, we will not be able to change them. We will not be able to have a conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
So between the stimulus or the event and the reaction, there's a gap. Usually this gap happens in less than a second, and it happens automatically. That gap is the meaning. That gap is the voices that automatically get triggered in our head. If I'm going to make a video, there's a lot of risk. Somebody may laugh at me. That's a voice that's going to make me go stretch and not do the video. That's a voice that's going to make me go have dinner and not do the video without me noticing. But if I pause and extend that less than half a second into a minute, into 3 minutes, into an hour, into a conversation with someone to help me realize this voice, and then be critical to this voice. Okay, is this voice in truth? Is this voice connected resourcefully to the big picture? And once you start to dismantle the authority that this voice has on your reaction and on your behavior, then you can let go of that voice and gradually start replacing it with a more resourceful voice, with a voice that says instead, who do you think you are? I'm doing a good thing. This is important. I must do this. This must be done for me and for the people in my life. Then the resistance starts to diminish, and then you have more freedom of choice.
You think that happens too because people look at the full picture at the end goal more and they get a little bit overwhelmed, and instead of focusing on the next step, the next tiny step?
Absolutely.
So
I'm personally a victim of that. Sometimes
yeah,
I
me
don't
too.
see sometimes I don't see my own progress, and I have to actually take a step back and see how much, like if I'm making videos, my speech is improving.
How far
It's
you've come.
improving
Yeah.
gradually. Yeah. But sometimes when you're on the grind, you don't see the progress. So you don't have that feedback loop. You don't have that reward system. So you stop doing or you get discouraged.
Yes. Me and my cousin Moha were just talking about this, and he gave me that advice. We were talking about like finishing my apartment in Egypt, and I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna cost all of this and that, and with these prices, it's crazy. And he was like, bro, just focus on one tiny thing. Just put a little bit of money aside and don't think about the whole thing, like about the full price ticket, like how much is it gonna cost, and just focus on electricity, for example, like put $100 a month aside or whatever. If this is all you can do, then just do it anyway. Just focus on the little tiny step ahead instead of focusing on the end goal that is very overwhelming and would definitely paralyze you.
Atomic habits. Start with the smallest thing and gradually move up, because our brain does not like change. So if all of a sudden I decide I'm going to work 2 hours a day and I haven't been working out at all, I'm going to do it for a day or two, but I'm not going to be consistent because the alarm went off in my brain. So how do I fly under the radar of my brain? I start very small. I work out 5 minutes a day and hold it for a week. No, I'll commit. No matter what, I'm going to work out 5 minutes a day. After a week, it starts to become a little bit more automatic. I can start lean into it more. I'll increase it to 15. And gradually, it's going to become part of you, part of your life, part of your daily schedule. And then in 10 years, you'll be in a great shape. In 5 years, you'll be in a good shape. Tony Robbins always said, people overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year, and they underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years. I'm like, man, in the next 6 months, I'm going to start this business. I'm going to become a millionaire. And then you meet this guy 10 years later, and he's still in the same job. But it's more resourceful when we think in 10 years, I can be there, but I have to start here and now. And that's the path that I'm going to do. I have to do these little things every day. These little boring things, I have to do them every day. But I have to find a way in my brain to make them fun and to enjoy them and to make them meaningful. And at the same time, not lose sight of the big picture. We have to keep both in mind, the big picture and the small things, the small daily things. In The Alchemist, there's a story. He went to a wise man who has a beautiful castle. And he told him, teach me your wisdom. Like, how can I live life better and make the most out of it? And he told him, take this spoon, put a little bit of oil in it, and walk around the castle and come back and we'll talk. So he took the spoon, put oil in it, and walked around the castle, looked at the trees and looked at the architecture of the castle, the water, the birds, just fascinating, majestic scenery. And then he came back and he told him, is the oil still in the spoon? And he looked at it, he was like, no, it fell. So he told him, do it again. And he did it again and it fell. And do it again until he kept it in the spoon. And he told him that's the secret in getting the most out of your life. To enjoy it, but at the same time, take care of the little things, take care of the responsibilities, the daily tasks, the boring things, but that are important for you to have this amazing experience.
Yeah, that's a good story.
Yeah.
I love this book. Yeah, man, there are so many books about procrastination and
yeah. How do you wrestle with procrastination?
so that's like on a daily basis. There's this book called Eat That Frog. It's probably the first book I read in my life. I was probably 17 or 18.
Brian Tracy.
Brian Tracy, baby. Yeah. So he says basically to eat the biggest, ugliest frog first thing in the morning. If you do that, nothing will beat that. Anything else will be super easy for you to do. So I make a list of all the things I need to do and then tackle them one by one, starting with the toughest one, the hardest one, the one that I don't want to do the most. Okay.
What is it?
Can be jogging. It can be really depends on like what do you like doing and what you don't like doing. So for example, I hate doing laundry and folding my laundry. I always procrastinate about folding my laundry. So I always tackle that first thing in the morning. Back to what I was saying about motivation. So when people rely on motivation to take action, they end up procrastinating because it's unreliable. But if you actually flip the cycle, if you take action, you will get motivated when you take action. As you doing your stuff, you will be reminded of why you actually started this and you'll get motivated and then you'll keep going and then you keep taking action. You build momentum, right? So less friction, more momentum, and it will be just like ongoing until it's a habit.
An old saying goes, if you want to be a good bricklayer, start laying bricks. I think Aristotle said that.
What about you?
Wanna...
How do you incorporate it?
A very specific example is that I used to come back from work and I plan to make a video and I just feel this resistance. And the way it manifests in me is lack of energy, lack of motivation, and I just don't want to do it. So what helped me is go through my routine, say a little prayer, go through my vision board, and that reminds me of the reason. So that fire that I ignite in myself pushes against the resistance, and then I do it anyway. But that was using a lot of force. That was using a lot of energy to do the things I needed to do. A coach helped me in a coaching session. She asked me, so let's go slowly through the thought process as you come back home and you put your bag down and you're ready to make a video. What exactly is going through your mind? So what used to happen in 3 seconds, she expanded it in a 1-hour life coaching session. So I realized the source of the resistance. Once I realized it, I was able to diminish it. I was able to start being critical.
And what was that?
I just didn't want to embarrass myself. There's a lot of potential for embarrassment. Somebody puts a comment, somebody laughs at you. That's why most people don't take action on the things that they want most, because they don't want to be failures. They don't want to be seen as failures. They don't want to embarrass the people they love, and they don't want to be embarrassed themselves.
That's a very good example. So how did you get over it? How did you bypass it?
Just recognizing these voices and hearing them and making them loud enough that I see that they are there, that they are voices, that they're not facts. Because if we don't recognize them, we're going to think they are facts. So once you recognize this voice, then you can be critical to it. Okay, is this voice true? What does this voice really need? Did this voice accomplish anything worthy of accomplishment? So once you dismantle the authority and the power of this voice that has been controlling you, then you can replace it with a different voice. Okay, I'm doing this for the good.
Or you become the observer of your mind.
Well, you become the observer of your mind and you notice this voice, but then you have to actually roll up your sleeves and change that voice.
Right.
So for example, in therapy, when somebody is traumatized from a memory that happened in the past, the way you heal it is not only go back and process it, you go back and process it and replace it with a positive meaning. You have to replace it. You cannot leave it empty. So you're the observer of your mind, and then you are the engineer of your mind after you become the observer. But you cannot be the engineer if you haven't been the observer. And being the observer is a great step, but there's more. You can observe your mind, and then you can change your mind. Totally. You can change your brain. You can change who you are. You're in control.
I was just referencing the power of now again.
Yeah. So that's how it manifested in my life. In the beginning, before I recognized the voice, I would just push through. I would motivate myself. I would remind myself of the things I want to accomplish and how it's going to benefit me and how it's going to benefit the people in my life. So I would push through the internal resistance, but that's a lot of energy. What's an even better solution is to have less internal resistance, to recognize what's going on inside your head, inside your heart, inside your chest, inside your body. Feel the emotions. When you feel the emotions, you're going to tap into these voices. Once you tap into these voices, you can change these voices and your emotions are going to change. That's how you honor your emotions. You tap into them, see what they want, see what they are saying, and then you have the power to change them. You don't suppress them. You listen to what's happening first, and then you can change them. So you don't act upon your emotions, but you honor them to see the messages that are coming from them.
Yes.
Because the messages may be beneficial. Maybe I need to be more alert. Maybe I need to improve my skills as a speaker so I don't embarrass myself. And in different situations, of course. Sometimes it's easier to recognize these voices, and sometimes it's more difficult to recognize these voices. Sometimes the voices are many, and sometimes it's confusing. You cannot identify what they are saying. You cannot identify that they are voices to begin with. And sometimes they are images. So these images trigger emotions, positive or negative. So you have to tap into, what image do you see when something happens? What image do you see when you're about to do a task? And is that image empowering you or disempowering you? Once you recognize the image, you can have more control to change it.
So we're talking about an awareness problem here, right? You just need to become aware of what's going on inside of you and what is causing you to procrastinate. So how do you catch yourself procrastinating? Because people usually, when they procrastinate, the first thing they go to is their phones. To either they got notified by Facebook that they have a new like, and then they immediately go to their phones and then they start to scroll and check what people are up to. It's like an addiction. How do you get yourself out of that, out of this social media zombie mode?
I like that question. I think you have to fortify your life. How do you fortify your life? By really igniting that meaning as many times through the day as you can. Ignite that meaning, that fire, okay, that drive. Another thing you can do to fortify your life is to have a schedule. I have a daily schedule that I have to write what I do every hour. I write it and I do a check mark. So right now from 12 to 1, we had a masterminds group meeting. So I'll finish and I'll go check it and write mastermind group meeting. So that's another layer of me fortifying my life, my day, my schedule. So from 1 to 2, because I'm committed to the schedule, I'm less likely to waste time. Another way that I'm fortifying my life is that I meet you every day and I tell you that I accomplished my tasks or I didn't accomplish my task. And you're like, why? And I have to answer. And my answer, I want it to be legit. So I'm fortifying my life as much as I can.
By having an accountability partner.
By having an accountability partner, by having a schedule, by having a morning routine to ignite that fire, to remind myself of the meaning, of the purpose, of the why. Like that guy that was carving through the mountain, he did not forget the why. Like, I don't think he did it out of discipline. I think he did it out of meaning. This must be done. I don't want anyone else to feel the way I felt.
Yeah. So don't you think people need to hit rock bottom first before they get to that like ignition you're talking about?
That's what you call the F this event from the
This
book
event.
Unscripted.
Yes.
And that's what my mentor Troy Horn would say. So I asked him, when do people start taking self-improvement seriously? And he said, you have to hit rock bottom.
Yes,
That
100%.
that's how he went through it. And also I think that's how you went through it. Like, you told me my finances, I could not take this mess anymore. Something had to happen. And for me, once I graduated college and got a job, within the first few months, I was like, man, this is not it. This cannot be it. And since then, I've been striving and striving and striving and seeking knowledge and seeking help and seeking support. How can I make this different? This cannot be it. I don't want this to be it.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost like you have to taste shit in order to prevent it. Your motive will be like, I'm not going back there. So I'm doing whatever it takes not to get back there. It's like David Goggins. This is how he ignites the fire inside of him when he is running. He always says stuff to himself like, who's going to carry the wood? Or who's going to carry the logs? Something like that. You don't know me, son. They don't know me, son. Something like that. He keeps reminding himself what he's been through and that he will never go back again. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
it's a good way to motivate yourself to not only seek the heaven. I'm plagiarizing Jordan Peterson right now. You run towards the heaven that you envision for yourself, and you run away from the hell that would be if you don't take action, if you don't stay consistent, if you don't become disciplined. So that gives you meaning, gives your life meaning, gives the task that you're doing meaning, even though it's a difficult task, even though you have a lot of responsibilities that are heavy. How do you transcend the suffering of life? You transcend it by finding meaning in the things that you must do. Life becomes bearable. Life becomes livable. Life becomes joyful when you do the things that you have to do and give them meaning. But if you don't have meaning, you can easily turn nihilistic. And you'll either do them resentfully or you won't do them at all. But to do them in a meaningful way is to do them in gratitude and voluntarily. And that's how he says it. Hashtag big picture.
Good stuff.
Printed out my answer, bro. Freaking professional here.
I thought we need authenticity, so I'm not going to teach people about stuff that I don't do. So I'm just going to say my experience with procrastination, and that's it.
Legit.
2 seconds later.
If you replace motivation with consistency and discipline, you'll get things done no matter what.